Dear friends, good morning to all. This is your RAPETI Suryanarayana advocate from Vizag. In the earlier sessions, I gave many lectures with regard to various topics, which are all useful to the practicing advocates, law students, and also for the students who are appearing for the competitive exams. And these topics are also useful for the common public also. In this session, let us discuss with regard to whether police officer has a right to arrest any person without order from magistrate or without warrant from the magistrate. The topic is police officer have power to arrest any person or not. Let us see in this section. The police officer has a power to arrest any person. In what circumstances? In what cases? Let us see. In what circumstances, in what cases, or in what offenses the police officer have a power to arrest any person? Let us see. Number 1. The police officer have a power to arrest any person who commits cognizable offense in his presence. That means, in the presence of police officer, if any person commits cognizable offense, then such police officer has a right to arrest that person. Next, the police officer against whom a reasonable complaint has been made. That means, to the police officer, any person gives a reasonable complaint stating that such person has committed a cognizable offense, or to the police officer, any person gives credible information, or the police officer has received credible information from any person or by any other manner that information states as that such person has committed a cognizable offense, or the police officer reasonably suspects that such person has committed a cognizable offense. That's all cognizable offenses. What I have said just now, if punishable with imprisonment less than 7 years or up to extent 7 years, whether with or without fine. And also, if two conditions are satisfied, then the police officer has a right to arrest that person if that person has committed a cognizable offense punishable with imprisonment less than 7 years or up to 7 years, whether with or without fine. Let us see what are the two conditions here which is applicable to the police officer to arrest. First condition, the police officer, on the basis of reasonable complaint or credible information received or reasonable suspicion that such person commits a cognizable offense. That is the first condition. Second condition, that the police officer should satisfy that such arrest is necessary. For what purpose that such arrest is necessary? To prevent such person from committing any further offense, or to prevent that person from tampering the evidence, or to make disappear of the evidence related to the offense, or for proper investigation of the case, or if such person is not arrested, then it is not sure to present that person before the court. That means, if such person is not arrested by the police officer, then it is not sure to produce before the court or to make his presence before the court, or to prevent such person from making any inducement, threat or promise to any person who is acquainted with the facts and circumstances of the case, to prevent that person or disuse that person from disclosing such facts to the court or to police officer. In all these circumstances, if the police officer is satisfied with these two conditions, then have your right to arrest such person on writing reasons for such arrest of such person. Next, in this I said that if the person commits offense punishable with imprisonment for a term less than 7 years or up to 7 years, whether with or without fine. If the person commits offense punishable with imprisonment more than 7 years or with death sentence, then the police officer, basing on the credible information received, as that such person committed a cognizable offense punishable with imprisonment more than 7 years or with death sentence, then basing on that credible information, and also if the police officer has reason to believe that such person committed such offense, cognizable offense, then the police officer has a right to arrest such person without an order from magistrate or without warrant from a magistrate. Let us see the next one. The police officer has a power to arrest any person who has been proclaimed as an offender. That means the police officer has a power to arrest any person who has been proclaimed as an offender, either under this code, that means either under civil procedure code or by the state government. That means if any person proclaimed as an offender either under this civil procedure code or by the state government, in that circumstances The police officer has a power to arrest that proclaimed offender without order or warrant from the magistrate. Let us go to the next one. The police officer has a power to arrest any person who was suspected as a deserter from any armed forces of the Union. That means the police officer has a power to arrest any person who is suspected as a deserter from any armed forces of the Union. Next, the police officer has a power to arrest any person who commits breach of rule under section 356 subsection 5 after he is released from conviction. That means if the released convicts commits breach of rule made under section 356 subsection 5, then the police officer has a right to arrest such person without order or warrant from the magistrate. Next, if any act committed by any person at any place out of India, if such act committed in India would be punishable as an offense and he is liable under a law relating to extradition or any other law or otherwise, liable to be apprehended or detained in custody in India. That means if any person commits any act at any place out of India, if such act is committed in India, would be punishable as an offense for which he is liable under a law related to extradition or otherwise, apprehended or detained in custody in India. That means if the police officer received credible information with regard to the person who commits any act at any place outside India, or against such person, police officer got a reasonable complaint that such person commits act at any place outside India, that such act is punishable in India, or if the police officer reasonably suspects that such person commits act at any place outside India, that such act would be punishable as an offense in India under the law relating to extradition or otherwise, that he will be apprehended and detained in custody in India. In these circumstances, the police officer has a power to arrest such person without a warrant or order from the magistrate. Let us see the next one. The police officer has a power to arrest any person who got requisition from another police officer. The police officer has a power to arrest any person on the requisition received from another police officer. In that requisition specifies the name of the person to be arrested and the offense for which that such person is to be arrested. That means if against any person requisition received from any another police officer, then such police officer has a power to arrest such person basing on the requisition he received. I hope it is clear to you all. Next, if any person is in the possession of anything found, if any person is in the possession of anything found which suspected to be stolen property, that means that thing is suspected to be stolen property, or stolen property, and the person in whose possession that thing is found is suspected to be a committed an offense with reference to such thing. That is nothing but theft. That means if in any person possession anything is found, if such thing is suspected to be a stolen property and the person is suspected to be a committed an offense with reference to such thing, in these circumstances also the police officer has a right to arrest such person without order from the magistrate or without warrant from the magistrate. Next, the police officer has a power to arrest any person who obstructs the police officer while in his execution of his duty. That means if the police officer was obstructed by any person, it means if the police officer is in duty, that means if the police officer is in his execution of his duty, if any person obstructs that police officer, then such police officer has a right to arrest such person without order or warrant from the magistrate. Next, the police officer has a right to arrest any person without order or warrant from the magistrate if any person escapes or attempts escape from the lawful custody. That means if any person attempts to escape or escaped from the lawful custody, then any police officer has a right to arrest such person without a warrant or order from the magistrate. In all these circumstances, the police officer has a power to arrest any person without order or warrant from the magistrate. Kindly like my videos and subscribe my channel. Thanks a lot.